You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
Well, and we kicking off recording. Rachael and I are already talking, and it's so really cool to meet you, Rachael. I got a zine of yours up at Floating World Comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're the first person I've heard who got one there. They sell out of them and stuff, and they enjoy my stickers. I have some more actually to replenish, and new titles. Actually, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, Floating World. Yeah.
Wow. So, what made you buy it? That's what I want to know. Like, why Something Rather Than Nothing? Why? Is it I Belong to Me? That's probably the only series.
I Belong to Me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one?
The photography. 2 and 3.
Oh, 2 and 3. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and the photography, illustration, the subject matter. To be honest, I've been around folks who struggled on issue 3 with the body dysmorphic disorder and this forthrightness. And I find that zines can really help people. There's a direct way of communicating. And so I thought that was great. I got I Belong to Me. We're going to bounce questions back and forth off each other. I know that. Let me ask one first. Tell us about I Belong to Me. Tell us about zines and why zines. I adore zines, but that's me. Tell us about I Belong to Me.
Much like everything in my life, I'm a late bloomer, and zines, they seem to, from what I've observed now, they seem to go through a renaissance every 7 to 9 years is what I've informally observed. They go and they're like the hot thing, and then someone else picks it up, and then, zines are dead, whatever. But you know what? Zines are the most immediate and accessible way to, I don't want to say get your message out. That sounds so cheesy, but who's going to stop you? You're going to make it. Who's going to stop you? Like I did a little informal workshop at my older kids' middle school about zines because the art instructor was really into it, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do this on the spot, And kids were asking me like, why do you do this? Or who's letting you do this? Like somebody asked, who is letting you do this? I'm like, letting you do this? You're letting yourself do this, And it was like, well, I don't think I have anything to say. I said, oh, you have plenty to say. That's even saying enough right there. I said, a zine can be anything. Like, for example, when I went to the Detroit Zine Fest, I had kind of manifested travel last year. At the end of last year, I was like, hey, you know what? These zines got enough of a thing a little bit. Maybe I can get some travel involved with someone to travel and see some places and go with the zine. So I went to the Detroit Zine Fest, and there was a lady giving out at the end. She was giving these out. They were the folded mini zines that are so fun and delightful to fold. Those things are great. But she'd spent a little bit of money. They were color. And to fold, I learned a couple of things with her zine. How to spell or how to pronounce Hamtramck, Michigan. It's spelled Hamtramck, right? The mind boggles. So I'm like, this little Hamtramck? What that? Wow. It's Hamtramck, like Hamtramck. And they were backyards from the 70s in color in this mini zine. And I told this kid that. I said, there's this woman. I said, you're not going to probably relate exactly. You're like 7th grade. But this woman, who's going to stop her? Yeah. But I also said, too, it's all on your message. I was basically trying to say, do we say bad words at all? I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was trying to say in so many words, like, if you're an asshole, you're going to get your ass handed to you kind of thing. It's on the message, like any kind of an is that's not an artist, any the transphobic, racist, fascist, whatever. You might have an audience with that. Is that the right audience that you want? And people aren't going to be as receptive to that, especially in Portland. Maybe if you go out, maybe like Idaho, I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else, but you know what I mean? You've got to know your audience, I guess, know what you know. And also you can do a deep dive in something. I told him that you don't know. You're not going to proclaim yourself the authority, or maybe you can in the zine. Who's going to stop you? That's kind of my thing. Who is going to stop you? Should they stop you? I don't know. You stop yourself. We stop ourselves enough with our limitations.
Yeah, I think that's right. When folks ask you the questions like, how'd you get this published? There's this historical idea that there has to be like, industry and you look at DIY and sharing and getting this out has its own a culture of its own. And I like the power of that. And I found that myself. I talked about this before on the show, like, when I was younger, I'd walk past. It's like the opposite for me. Like, again, you said late bloomer, like yourself. Like, when I was younger, I walked past small press, like these small press. I was like a little bit of a like literary snob when I was younger, like in my head, like I like trashy stuff, but like a snob in the way of like, I didn't look at small press or zines. I'm like, what is all that
No,
type of stuff?
relatable, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
And then as I've
democratization.
gotten along and seen in Portland and places like Seattle
Oh, yeah.
and, talking about music, somebody does a deep dive on some weird true crime story from like 70s Oregon, like go
Mm.
with it. Like I want to read that. And, these nice threads. And great work, by the way. I just want to say that,
Oh, I appreciate
one
it.
thing I reread it, just recently. I Belong to Me, everybody, the zine by Rachael Tyrell. One of the things I picked out within it that I remembered was how many questions you asked in it. And I like made a note in my mind. I'm like, that's what I
Oh,
do on my show. So I was like, in your narrative, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with like telling a narrative and popping up questions because I think in their head it fucks it up. Like for everybody, like the narrative's supposed to flow. I love questions and like
oh,
bumping those in there and kind of like disrupting. And I love that in your zine, just these big questions that made me think, and great effect.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So zines, with the democratization of it, it really just, I guess, globalization, I mean, you can do them from anywhere. Some people do their slick thing, like what you're saying about being a snob, sort of about stuff. And I think it's part of my ADHD too. When I look at a book or I'm given a book or something, I can't really read it if the font is off in any way, the
Yeah.
typeset. God forbid I see a typo. Oh my God. I'm like, okay, in this world now, in this day
Head
and age,
crashes.
yeah,
Head
just kind
crashes.
of discombobulated. Nope, nope, can't do it. So I push it back. So that's why I feel like audiobooks are such a great, leveling out of stuff. You can choose the same voice, just do this kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I do enjoy narration, but it's all on the narrator too. And I feel like zines, you are really, you're creating and you're narrating too. And mine are really semi-autobiographical, outright, like write what you know, right? I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's take a deep dive into this and how would I present it. And I did this really unself-consciously. I'd started with the art, which is a whole other thing, and I had really avoided writing for about 20 years. Seriously, I used to be like, I was told I was a good writer, you're gonna do things, good writing, blah blah, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't fulfilling for me. It wasn't cathartic anymore. But these zines are very cathartic. Those had to come out. The first four were just like the first one, especially, and then the second, third one flowed. But I combined the art and the writing. I ended up just writing because it was so cathartic. I was going through. I mean, when aren't we all going through the human drama?
Yeah.
This stuff was so overwhelming. I have a therapist and stuff, but it wasn't really cutting it with just the amount of stuff that needed to spew forth, right? So I just started doing it like prose style, just sort of stream of consciousness at first. A lot of the first two zines are really still that stream of consciousness. I was like, don't over edit it, maybe less is more sometimes, but does this make sense to me anymore? It was just kind of a compulsion. It had to come out. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing this art. Okay, can I combine the two? And I combined the two to better effect, I feel. I think they've been much more well received putting them together than, doing them on their own.
Yeah.
That's kind of a better way to put it. What was the question you're thinking of from the zine, if you don't mind me asking? Can you remember?
I'm
What's
gonna
the
I'm
question you're
gonna
hung up
I'm
on?
gonna look at it. I'm gonna look at it right now. And
Yeah.
that was like I said, there was one here. There was, isn't it an innate human desire, the longing to be truly seen in caps.
Mm-hmm.
And, like talking to artists and thinking about like big questions, like, it's like has to do with things like loneliness or misunderstanding and communication. Like I want to be like seen, like know me. And, I love that. I love that question. I wanted to ask you a big question. Then I know you're going to hit me with a couple.
Yeah.
Rachael, what is art?
Well, here's the thing. So I made myself a little outline. I kind of will just spew on these a little bit. And
Yeah.
then Go. Okay. So this is from the beginning what I started. I went kind of from a couple of days ago to just sort of immediately, like actually a few moments ago before I logged on. So art's anything that makes you feel something, and it doesn't have to be a fixed object. It's connected directly to emotion and perception. That's in my opinion. It's less about the medium, really. It's more about the internal response that it generates. That's the way I feel about it. Like it can be a tangible object, of course. It can be an intangible object. I feel like it can even be a spiritual experience. It can be even maybe what you misunderstand. You know how the mind and memory will play tricks and you'll have these little vignettes and things. It can be that. It's the internal alchemy that it sparks. That's what I put from within you. And it's the
I like
expression.
the
This is one that
alchemy.
really hit me where I was like, did I write this? Yeah, I did. It's the
Yeah.
expression of the profound sensitivity to the world around and within us. So I was like, oh, that sounds really good. And then, then I was answering your something rather than nothing. We'll talk about that in a moment. So art is survival, resistance, and revolution. I'm like, oh, let's go. That's what it is. Ultimately, but it's many of these things. And then it's all of them combined, and then maybe it's nothing of them too. You know, it doesn't need framing. It's like watching the sunset through a smog-stained window and finding it more beautiful for its corruption. Okay, so
Wow.
does that answer? I mean, does that
It
partially?
does answer. I love that. I love that answer. I love the energy in it, and like the kind of there's a provocation in art for me, like the
Very
energy
much.
that's in it, like a confrontation and a provocation. It doesn't have to be outlandish, but there's something about art in that way that I really feel it. Now um let me I am going to sneak one more in. What is the about the role of art? And then I'm going to answer a couple of your questions and things.
Yeah.
The role of art changed. Like it's late 2024. We're recording.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people I talk to, man, like shit's heavy, right? Politics,
Mm-hmm. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. Like
anger,
that
yeah,
saying,
like politics, anger, income inequality, which is almost makes me puke.
yeah, we were
Things like
just,
that.
how did we get here? I mean, it
Yeah.
was
So
overnight
like,
and it wasn't.
if this has like, if it's if it's something like this, or you're feeling something like this, has the role of art changed now, or is it still arting no matter when it's popping up?
It's always going to pop no matter when it's popping up, but obviously, the pendulum swings, and I really feel like art, especially in zines and things that are really DIY, like who's going to stop? Well, we'll find out, right? Who's going to stop you besides yourself, right? Why you express it, the compulsion of that inequality of like, to be seen again, right? To be seen, however that is, nobody imagines, at least I know, to speak for myself, I didn't imagine I'd be here. First of all, I didn't think I'd live this long, number one. Number two, what is even happening right now? Like if you're not mad, you're not paying attention. If you're not, keeping up with stuff. But then, and it's the doom scroll, though. Then it's the
Yeah.
social networks have us as product, right? So if we're not paying for the product, we are the product. And I tell my kids of the time is money thing. So if you're not paying money, you're paying with your time, with your energy, right? And isn't that kind of what's going on with labor wages and
Yeah.
the powers that be want to create more children so they can, have more of a labor class, right? So if you don't have kids, you don't have a labor class, right, to work for these wannabe oligarchs and all of that. I guess that's digressing dramatically.
No, it's actually that part was framing as far as
It's time
seeing
that,
some of the political
digressing a
dynamics.
bit, but
Yeah.
the motivations I think are different. And I think when you're really compelled, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're disenfranchised, in these, incorrigible is even the wrong word. Incorrigible kind of implies fun. Irredeemable, is that the right word for this? Where some of these circumstances are like irredeemable, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can only gaslight yourself so much. Like what's that? I mean, I'm kind of the meme queen with all my friends. I have a meme for everything. By the way, I have a meme for every single thing. And this one with that dog with the fire, and it's like, this is fine. Like, what's our version of that right now? And I'm just trying to be cool, calm, and collected, or pretend to be, at least, for my kids, and just kind of, take it in, just teach them to be critical thinkers. For me, it's like, You can go to school, sure. And we were briefly talking earlier about school stuff and things.
Yeah.
My goal to teach them is, being independent, relatively happy is a whole other thing, but self-reliant, independent, and also critical thinkers. Because I believe that's the problem here. They want people to be uneducated. The greater they that I don't want to be a part of, they want people to be uneducated so they can be manipulated really easily. And what are the stats? I'd shared this on my Instagram. It's 51% of Americans now. I try not to say anything I can't absolutely back up, and I revise my opinions and my things based on new information, but I believe it is. I will triple check this. It's 51% of Americans can only read at an 8th grade level or below. And out of those, 35% can read 6th grade or below. So those educated elites or whatever you want to call it, or whatever the name calling from the other, whatever, right? When did education become like an opinion, like science? Well, I'm not going to digress on that. When did it all become just an opinion? You know what I mean? Like, here's an example. God, I don't want to say this one, but a long time ago, like about last year, a long time ago in my kids' lives, right, when they're 10 and 13 now, my younger one asked me, we're on the drive back, and randomly asked me out of nowhere, is Florida a country? Mic dropped a little bit. I was like, is she serious? I'm not trying to react. I'm like, oh my God, have I failed as a parent? No, but I'm like, okay, is this like a provocation? Does she seriously think, okay, let's go with this? And I'm like, well, they wish they were a country. I'm pretty sure they are like big enough to be a country. They're bigger than most countries. But I said, no, honey, they're a state. And then we kind of went in on the state thing. And long story short about thrifting, my parents met at the West Hollywood swap meet. So I've been involved in that my entire life. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do?
Heck yeah.
And this never happens. I go to a thrift store and I need something. I can never find it, right? But I'm like, I'm going to go get a goddamn globe. I'm going to the Goodwill. I'm going to get a goddamn globe. And I'm going to and I found a globe. I found a globe. I found a black globe for like my goth sensibility. I found this like little black globe from 2010. And I was like, okay, fair enough. There's going to be some changes, but the states aren't going to change, right? So got this globe and showed her, and it was just a much better way to kind of scale, size and things. And then I was reminding her, kind of like I was telling my friends in England when they visited me, they're like, oh, why can't we just drive like an hour and a half to go to Texas? I'm like, you don't understand how it works. Like there's this much on the map, but the distance, it's.
Yeah, it means a ratio.
Exactly. I'm trying to explain that. Math is not one of my strong suits either. So I'm kind of spatially challenged too. I'm like, great. So, where was the question again? We digressed with this.
No, we were talking about, the role of art right now.
Right. So that's art too
times.
in, not educating and reframing. It's like education. I mean, I think anything that's learning is education. It's not this formal. I mean, it can be as formal as, a lecture at university or something, but anything that makes you think and maybe possibly be willing to revise your stance, opinion, morals, values even. But I don't really see that happening these days. That's kind of disappointing. People, I think, if anything, are more adamant to double and triple down on willful ignorance. Is that the best way to put it? Willful, deliberate ignorance.
Yeah, well, and everybody listened to the show. Speaking of Rachael Tyrell, and I was even as far as like introducing you about like all the different things you do. I mean, photography, modeling, writing, zine creating, et cetera, et cetera. What else did I miss? And then ask me a question because I know you wanted to start off with that.
Oh, geez. Kind of like, what haven't I done? You live long enough, you get to experience a lot of different things. I did acting in LA, and I was in front and behind the camera. That's a whole interesting other thing too. The reason why I moved to Pacific Northwest, right? I was like LA through and through. I had a little diversion in Minnesota for 2 years. When I was 27, I met a 19-year-old on the internet and moved to Minnesota to be with him.
Minnesota. And you became a Minnesotan.
Don't you know? Yeah, for a couple of years. But going from Los Angeles to this tiny town called Anoka, which was a self-proclaimed Halloween capital of the world. I'm like, doesn't Salem have a say in this? Anyway.
Yeah.
That was such a culture shock. It was like, I think at the time, 5,600 population. And I lived in LA, like Los Feliz, Hollywood. Like I grew up literally in Hollywood, California, like with the Hollywood sign and everything. That's like my whole background. So that was an interesting culture shock. I'd only been in snow once before that. I know it's like
Sure.
embarrassing. Now I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's more than making up for it. And when I first drove up to Seattle with some friends, the first thing I said was, "Oh my God, there are too many fucking trees." I mean that in the nicest way possible.
It's disorienting. It
It
was
was just like, wait,
disorienting.
what's
How do I
happening?
place
Just
myself?
my neck whipping around, right? Because I understand you're East Coast, right?
Yeah,
You're
Rhode
from
Island. So
Rhode Island,
I
yeah,
need to see some concrete, a couple wires, and a tenement building to be able to
right. To just
navigate space.
I know it's strange, as whatever it is, it's where you kind of come from. So um, I've done a bunch of different things. I've also been a licensed esthetician. Currently, I guess in the state of Oregon, I'm a certified recovery mentor. That was my last like official paid gig. I'm a mom, but I'm also a university student. I'm almost done with this one. I may be going for a master's degree in social work, actually.
Oh my
I'm like,
goodness.
how old am I going to be when whatever. I wasn't even supposed to be here. So I'm like, okay, just, icing on the cake
Wonderful.
of this thing. And I may become a therapist of some sort. Um, Social work, it's such an honorable thing, doesn't pay anything. It's why are these jobs the hardest? Well, every job is hard, I guess, but some of these really dedicated people that share the love and share the caring are paid some of the least. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
those dedicated to the most vulnerable and in need of assistance,
Mm-hmm.
and I think on the side of the people, it's like it's just that needs to be honored more. I mean, I think nobody has an expectation of riches, but an expectation of generational poverty is not a reasonable expectation
Right,
for entering
right.
it,
I mean,
right?
there's cycles and there's, epigenetics and all of these things. And there's all the inequalities that contribute to everything. But water shouldn't be a privilege. Like water is a right, right? Healthcare
We
should
gotta
be
get
a
our
right.
politics, yeah, like to
Right.
where
It's
like
become so, oh God, and especially everything that's going on with the whole healthcare thing with, the Ivy League Folktown hero now, right? with all that going on, just like, at least people are talking, people are thinking.
yeah,
People have a horrible horror story. There's a comedian on Instagram that did something. I have Kaiser. I've had them for a long time. My opinion on them, mixed results. So if I'd imagine if you're probably really sick, knock on whatever, haven't really had to deal with that. They're not great if you're like really sick, but I think they're great as an HMO. At least that's been my experience. If you just smile and nod, get your, immunizations, get, the wellness checks. If you have a big earache, go check it out. They're fine. But I believe
mhm,
once you start getting sick, whatever that is, worrying about denial of coverage. Everybody has a horror story about that. And this
yeah,
comedian was bitching about Kaiser. And what was amazing was it was single-handedly probably the best database in this Instagram comment section of how Kaiser has done all these people dirty. And I was read like 200 of these stories just riveted, like,
yeah,
this is some comedian going off about Kaiser. And I'm suddenly feeling the humanity, our shared experience in having been denied or just questioned, or even worse, the doctor's questioned, right? And then there was that thing with, was it Blue Cross, Anthem, Blue Shield wanted to deny uh, anesthesia,
yeah,
limits on anesthesia, what was appropriate for the procedure.
yeah.
Like, what is it like pay by the minute, like 976 anesthesia or something? Like you're paying by the minute for
Woefully insufficient for proper care.
right. So what, you're gonna wake up in the middle of surgery or something? Actually that happened to me once because I do have a superhuman resistance to anesthesia. So I was like, God forbid I need anesthesia ever again. Geesh. Not I know where I'm not going to Blue Cross, right? So everybody has a story with this thing, but it shouldn't be a privilege. It's a right, right? You exist. You didn't ask to exist, right? You're here. Um,
You're thrown into the world, you know?
reasonably happy and healthy, right? Not this
Yeah.
generational poverty, and I am kind of concerned where, may I live long and prosper with this. I have a great grandma that lived to be 107, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm not even halfway done. Oh my God, what? No, 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 no. But half kidding. But
At the
that's
end of
what I
the
do.
year, it could feel like no matter what, at the end of any year, it could feel like, can I do this another 50%, another 100% more of the time?
No, exactly, and
Yeah.
quality life and things.
Sure.
All of that. I was thinking for my kids of like. I hope that they have at least as well of a existence as I do, not worse. Where it's the thing where are your kids going to be worse off than you are? And it's kind of iffy. At any moment this can all go. Everybody's 59% of people are paycheck to paycheck. You're one medical disaster away from bankruptcy, right? So it's
A lot of people.
these are a lot of things to think about. You have to make hard choices of things. It's one thing if it were me, I wouldn't care as much, but if the kids, you have to just in case take care of yourself a little bit so you have an okay standard of living. That's more what I think about a lot. And I have a lot of friends in kind of the death care industry. One of my best friends, she's a palliative care nurse, and she is a saint. Like, stories are, I mean, she's a saint. Like, it's just amazing. Like, I don't care about what they're paying you. They're not paying you enough, and she goes to these houses, she goes for these death visits, and she's able to, I feel like it's like playing God. She's able to pronounce the people's, death and stuff. And she says the families are the hardest part to work with. It's the families, it's not the people. And I'll tell you a really funny anecdote that she said, I just still crack up. One of her patients, this gal's lived quite a while, like not just a couple of weeks. I think it's going on like a month or two, because palliative care, it's the range. They might have 2 days, they might have 2 weeks, they might, have this undetermined amount of time. So this one patient of hers, not filing HIPAA or anything like that.
Right.
She says, I didn't know dying would be so boring. Let's get this goddamn thing done already. That's what her patient said to her. I'm like, wow.
Okay. That's an approach.
Dying is boring, Okay. I didn't know it'd be so boring. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's great. That's very astute. I'm sure we can make a zine.
Very, I rankle and protest and get scared and cower and live in horror. But if it's boring, then hey,
it's boring, right?
That's an angle.
Yeah, if you can pontificate upon that, right? You can just
might be at more peace.
Yeah, you can self-actualize. Maybe that's an ultimate sort of enlightenment in its own way. That was nothing I'd really considered. I was like, oh, okay. Well, but yeah, the families, it's harder and things. And you just, I feel like it's sort of like funerals or like weddings, right? They're for other people, maybe it feels like, they're for other people, right? Who knows what happens in the great beyond, if there even is, and all of that. But you can just hope you've made peace with yourself, and I feel like that's a day-to-day process of like, I know when I lay down, I put my head on the pillow, I'm reasonably well adjusted and okay with what I've done in life and okay with what I haven't done,
Yeah.
And try to lead by example with my, for my kids and stuff.
So just, just, pace it out to 107 too, maybe with some of those genes.
Yeah, back then too. That's a lot of work, I was like, And there's other women on my mom's side that have lived like just copious amounts of. I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, okay, so we'll see. Bring it on, right? Bring it on.
Yeah.
But you, I don't know if you find you get older, you just, it's not that you care less and less. The things that you worry about, like you see it in other people, things that you used to worry about, you're like, oh my God, may I have such simple problems? You know what I mean? The make the mountain out of a molehill, whatever your cliche is of it.
Yeah.
I wish I had these problems from before. Now it's like, a whole new world. Couldn't have ever imagined, these things. But it's again what you were saying earlier about, we were talking about the teachers thing, right? You're in that fight or flight response, right? We're not running from the woolly mammoth, right? None of our spears running from woolly mammoths. This is just some person not negotiating a salary thing, right? Not basic human decency. You're fighting
human
for these
behavior.
Things. Yeah, and we're up here this whole time now. It's not good for for anything, right? Like your cortisol, your mental health with young people, well, everybody, right? I mean, my older one was like, oh, why would I need therapy or whatever? I'm like, well, hello, COVID-19 is a major event catastrophe of our time, right? My younger one started kindergarten during COVID online. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. And I got to find out that I was not the homeschooling June Cleaver mom that I wanted to be.
Right. Well, everybody's placed into that like spot all of a sudden. So what questions you have for me? You wanted to flip the tables on this here.
Oh, yeah, I did. But did I write them down on this? I wonder if I can go. I guess
I even wrote down, because you forced me into a position where I had to prepare. And I really, I mean, no, it's not everybody who writes back and says, one of the questions you had was the first piece of
Of
art
art
that
in any form that moved you.
that
Yeah, because I
moved
was just
me.
thinking, how did you come up with this how did you come up with this podcast? It's something out of nothing, right?
Yeah, on the first thing, this two-tiered answer, and it's actually not too long, but first thing that overwhelmed me, that I don't know if I saw it as art, but I see it in art in retrospect. I was a little kid. I was in elementary school, and went on a school trip to Rhode Island School of Design, one of the
Oh,
greatest
wow, yeah, famous, yeah,
art schools in the world, I'd say. And
definitely.
being from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, Providence is right over there. And they took us city kids on the trip there, and showing us some art and some culture. And we went into this room, and it was a quiet, darkish room. And to me, and I'm going to use the word massive, there was a massive wooden Buddha that was in the room, and from the 14th century.
Wow.
Weathered, had been outside, but the sturdy, big wooden Buddha. And man, that planted itself in my head as a little kid, because as a city kid, what is this thing? What is it? Like, what? It's the Buddha. Like, what's it mean? Like, how's
And
it
then
that
from
old?
14th century, right? Like
Yeah, how's it
contemplating
1,000 years old? How am I
relation,
looking at
yeah.
here? I'm freaking city rat kid here. Like, what is this thing? And so anyways, at that time I didn't, view it as art, and, it's a religious object. It was art in my opinion, but I went in my, maybe about 8-9 years ago. Right. So I'm, this is my mid 40s now, going back a little bit, just a few years. And I'm in there, and of course it wasn't as big or as massive, but I remembered it. I could remember even where some of the divots were in the wood.
Wow.
Of the wooden statue, in characteristics of its, and it wasn't as big, but it was just as powerful. And because I had a snapshot Polaroid in my head when I was a kid of what it looked like, and then I took another one, and
But then we can't remember what we had for lunch 2 days ago, right?
right, you got the Polaroid. I'm like, now I can pull the Polaroid and pull it out of the file cabinet of my computer brain. That one out of a billion image. And the other piece I wanted to give you to fill out the answer is, like, when I saw something and was taught something as an art object that really moved me. It's actually quite classical, which I like, is Diego Velázquez, Las Meninas, the famous painting by Velázquez, and really drawn by that. And two pieces. One is that I was able to see, I went to the Prado in Spain. I was lucky enough to go to Spain when I was senior year of high school, paid for it myself, and kind of fundraised.
Wow, worked really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so saw it, live. As a matter of fact, when I saw Las Meninas, there was somebody painting it in front of it. So it was such a wild idea, because if folks aren't familiar with it, the painting of Las Meninas is, a lot of philosophers have written about, a lot of folks have talked about it. And there's these really odd things of where there's a reflection of the artist in the painting, and then there's the royal family, who are ostensibly the subjects or objects of the painting. You could see the artist Velázquez himself painting, and so it's this optical illusion, angles and such. And so a lot of philosophers talk about it and think about it, but that was something, when I learned about, saw it, was amazed, read about it, was amazed, and then saw it in life. That was amazed.
How big is it in person?
Yeah.
How big is it in person?
I remember probably it might be like the Buddha, because I was younger. The Buddha statue, quite big, and his being of that period and a courtly painter, the scope of them, I can't really lay it out for folks. Great question, but classical Spanish royalist style, and yeah. So I had those experiences, both of those experiences, by the time I was 18, and I would say they're kind of like foundational.
Those are formidable, definitely. No, those are definitely formidable. What was the other one that I was really you've kind of been answering this sort of what drives your curiosity about other people's creative processes. I feel like that's been kind of coming along as we've been
Yeah.
talking. So here's this one. So when you interview artists, or I mean, really anybody on your podcast at this point, I mean, we're not limiting like what is art, right? What unexpected connections or patterns have you noticed, if any? I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's kind of a deep question. I mean, do you notice any? Like,
I wrote down some, and this was really helpful. And I really appreciate you asking me these questions because on you as a question asker and me as a question asker, you know what it can do to kind of collect your thoughts and answer the question, why the fuck am I doing anything? Like,
no, it's true, and not asking you in terms of like defending or justifying your existence.
No, just like
but
what. When I ask that
answer.
question, let me mention it. When I ask that question, there's always a little bit to it where it's a little bit uncomfortable. First of all, people in general aren't asked to be, profound questions regularly. But then when you say like, why are you doing this? And again, it's not an attack, but it's like just philosophically thinking, I could eat a banana, I could take a walk, or I could get out my acrylic paints. We're choosing and making these choices. So here's what I've seen when I've talked to artists on my variety podcast show, an overwhelming need to create that emanates from these human beings that I talk to, that there is a power bigger that is creative, artistic, from the heavens, that from themselves or from their family that they can't help but do. Another piece is I see very acutely points in their life where there is support or lack of support and the impact that makes on them, right? A mentor that takes you by the side and say, hell, nobody's understanding what you're doing, but you know what? You're fucking brilliant. Keep doing it, right? Like those, and again, the roles of clergy people, teachers, parents, when they make an offhanded comment of being like, what the heck is that? About that sketch you've been working on, and they don't know they've been working so hard on that and are frustrated by it.
Yeah.
And support. And I want to say one other thing, which you might get a kick out of,
Try
at
me.
least in doing this show, being into music.
And you have quite a few episodes. I mean, I can't wait to kind of dive more into them in my
280 as we're recording right here, 286, 87.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that's no small feat. I mean, I've heard so much about podcasting, and it's like, I don't want to say it's sort of like zines. It's democratizing. Anybody can start a podcast, right? But how it's received, or the audience is going to be niche or not, right? But I feel like one should do one or two things well, right? You're not pizza. You can't please everybody, right?
Yeah. Well,
congratulations.
For me,
that's a great accomplishment. That's a lot. I don't have the patience probably to do 5 of them, let alone, produce them, because it's a lot of work.
But that's kind of, it's a deep interest in me. You have to have, philosophers, artists, you have to have an obsessive curiosity, sometimes a morbid curiosity, sometimes a dark curiosity, and to be, just to be like fascinated by what people can do. I'm a big sports guy too. Like I'm not like jock guy or anything, but like a lot of people, when I'm talking intellectual stuff and I start talking about baseball, won't start talking about like, what the fuck's wrong with them? Like, like, come on. Yeah. But for me, it all kind of fits together in thinking about what we're doing. Podcasts are perseverance, right? And that's what I can say. There are, like popular notions of podcasts out there. Everybody has one. Well, great. And, a lot of people have popped in, had one. The amount of people who create a podcast and maintain it over time, that's more of a testament. And that where you see podcasts that become popular over time, sometimes there's just being pluckish about it.
Well, then maybe they drop off too. I mean, it is a certain, I mean, you have to have that tenacity, right? Well, it's hard to do. I mean, there's a procrastination involved, but that tenacity to continue. A lot of people, I mean, I know for myself too, I'm so great at starting things. Finishing it, I'm just getting to a point of where I'm like, maybe done is better than perfect. Although what is, perfection is like this moving target in my mind, right? But done is better than perfect. I just kind of tell myself that with assignments and things and, deadlines and stuff, but nothing like a deadline to push you to quickly rectify whatever within yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, for me, like some folks have to know, where do you get all your gas? And like, how is it that like you do this almost like as an independent project? And I have helped my producer and editor, Peter Bauer, but the whole bit of like pursuing and talking to and establishing relationships and recording comes just out of like an extension of the way that I live. Like my brain has been like this my whole life, of like studying philosophy and literature when I was younger and being obsessive about art and playing an album 15 times in a row and like being in a zone, like all that type of stuff where it makes sense to me that I keep going. So it isn't an extension. It's like, oh, I'm going to think about philosophy today and art today. I'm compulsively thinking about it from the time I was in diapers, or like my brain was going that way. So I like it for me because I learned so much, and I am as fascinated by the questions I ask when I started asking them or not, because they're unanswerable. My questions are bullshit. Like these questions are kind of like BS at the bottom. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Yeah.
Right?
So I wrote down, I mean, that was not the one that really stymied me the most. I was kind of like, something rather than nothing. Like, are we like literal? What are we talking about? Physics? What are you talking about? Atoms? Like, what am I, how am I perceiving this question? But I put, there's something rather than nothing, because existence itself is an art, an endless process of making connections, finding patterns to create meaning. Something rather than nothing, because nothingness itself couldn't bear its own emptiness. Where did that come from? I don't know. That was last night. I was
don't skip over. You've had some profound words here. And
no. I mean, it really got me. Just kind of, sort of like, that pissed me off at first that I couldn't easily answer it, and that's not like the sort of talking too fast sort of know-it-all within me. But I just have to like categorize it in my brain. Do I need to compartmentalize it and get to it later? When I have a moment to focus and fully like understand it. But then I'm like one of the world's best overthinkers you've ever met. I can say 3 out of the last 4 therapists.
That's why we're doing this episode, the both of us. We both
attest to that.
It's fine.
Overthinking, so there's that overthinking part where I'm like, just let that go for a moment. But that's all I got for that. So I'm like, okay.
I thought, one of the things is on the question itself. And, for me, it's like, almost like in my intellectual marketing, like because of the title of the show, I can do anything I want on the show, right? Like that's my kind of like basic realization.
Yeah, I love the title because you can, before you read the subject of the blurb, right, the description of art philosophy, that can be anything. I mean, it definitely piqued my curiosity. I would definitely
absurdist,
check it out. Exactly. I would check it out. Or it can just be absolutely something totally serious. Like you could be some, I don't know, investment banker with a brand new BMW or something. It can be just, anything.
I've had people even on the framing of the question, even as properly framed. I'm not even quite sure it's even fundamentally properly framed, because I've had guests say, and there's a history back behind this question, because it's saying it's fundamentally improperly posed. The question is, how is there something rather than nothing? And that might tilt it more towards a physical, mechanical type of answer. But I've had people say, like, that really is, that there's something to phenomena. There's a thinginess to what's going on. So you have to ask how that is rather than why. So I think a question that can be that annoying is a good antagonist for.
It's annoying. Not persnickety. It's it's compelling for sure. I definitely think it's compelling, and it's also anything that really, honestly, that makes you question yourself. Anything that just kind of puts a pause in the chatter. You know what I mean? Which is what it did. And I was like, how could I answer this? I'm like, well, I could not answer it too, but that wouldn't be sufficient for me. I was like, okay, what did I? And I'm not saying, it's right or wrong. I think it's everyone's unique answer. I don't think anyone's right and anyone's wrong. That's maybe what I'm going to say from what I know about it so far.
Well, yeah, and then on the philosopher's questions, I mean, there's an idea which is fanciful and possibly true of being able to answer questions, and also on the other side is, and within philosophy, of asking questions. Each question prompts another question, is a thinking process, and being humble about whether, there's an answer. I have hunches on all the questions I ask. I have better hunches on all the questions I have asked over 5 years. Much better hunches.
You've been getting better hunches over the 5 years, right?
Hunches, yeah, hunches in trends. And they, like, even in types of artists, or maybe characteristics or way of looking at the world. Like when I interview musical artists, because of their interview and media world, I think they expect like tons and tons of questions, because they have to boom, 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 this track, track, working with this person. And a lot of times when I get guests on my show, I say, interviews are all different. This one has like 4 or 5 questions. I can ask a ton more or even less, but yeah, I'm not asking, 20 seconds after each one of these. It sounds a little bit silly, so it's like kind of this cadence and what people expect of why somebody wants to talk to them, or what's the ends, or
said. It's like a cadence and rhythm, and I guess you find a flow. Which do you know that psychologist? God, I just want to butcher his name. It's just way too many consonants. His last name's like this big, but it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Okay. And I believe he's Hungarian, if I'm going to butcher that. He's Hungarian or Czechoslovakian.
Okay.
He's a psychologist who's written some amazing books on flow. His, I think, definitive tome is called Finding Flow. And what you were saying earlier about just, where you're visiting the museum and just you're finding your flow, right? It's what you're doing when you lose all track of time. And I don't mean always in the ADHD way, like you're a card-carrying member, but where you find that flow, that goodness where nothing else matters at the time. And it's truly being in that moment, and that's why I think I do art, for the creation of that process. For me, it gets me out of my head, gets me out of all the chatter, the whole overthinking thing. And the thing too, I wish people wouldn't worry so much about. I talk to people about artists. I really honestly don't know what I'm doing at all. And I've just been blessed to kind of meet all these people and connections on the internet. And like, you met a guest through Floating World, right through a zine on Floating World. So we're here the zine on Floating World, at Floating World. It doesn't have to be finished or this thing, people, I think, put so much into kind of what they can get out of something, right? Like, I don't know, I spent 2 hours, so therefore I have blah, 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 blah to show for it, right? It can be just the journey.
Transactional. It's a transactional economy thing, right?
Exactly. And it can be just a journey.
Philosophy queers all that stuff up. Question queers all that stuff up, because the transaction is slowed. Why am I contacting you? What am I supposed to get on? I mean, there's an exchange. There's an exchange, of course, but it's like, I think in that capitalist mode, like you have to figure out my intentions. I have to figure out your intentions, or we can be like, let's discuss these issues so I can like learn from you, and you can learn about yourself, or you can learn from me. I don't know.
And that's what I wanted to learn with those questions. I had really thought of say like I'm audacious, like I'm the only one who want to know. But I said, I think I asked fairly good questions. I've, attuned myself with that over time. I feel like I'm asking better questions. Maybe a couple other people might want to know too, like the niche. And it's all about, I think, the journey as well as the destination. The journey is its own reward, I believe, especially with art, like, whether it's just a tangible thing or even just jot down something, or, something you see on Instagram, you curate your algorithm to show you more of what, you're into. And I try to keep that really open, really flexible. Try to see many different sides, even ones I especially don't agree with, and try to think of like, I like, for example, just how polarized everything is in this country right now. I've more than ever. I mean, I remember dating myself here, the first presidential election I remember was Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. Right. And
same for me.
Yeah. So, bumbling around in kindergarten or wherever it was it preschool or kindergarten probably. And just how, it's like, okay, or I don't know, I'm voting for Ronald Reagan. And then, oh, what's for dinner, sweetie? Right. It wasn't a thing. Right. And you could take space with people that maybe you disagreed with. And it wasn't this vehement, double downing with kind of this hate. But I see why everybody's angry. You know what I mean? I think everybody should be very, very angry with what's going on both sides. And maybe people, I've, gone on there and say,
there's an intensity.
There's this intensity in people, going against, I believe, in my opinion, against their best interests. And I think time will tell with that, but it's just going to affect everyone else. And I think while we're, it's a class war. It's not the actions of those above us, and I'm being like paranoid and woo, but the actions of those above us, we won't notice them as much if we're just this infighting of, F this, F that, whatever. My thing is the right way, the right way maybe for you, but who cares what other people do with themselves? Who cares what other people do? Like,
a lot of people are an army of one in their heads. Army of one.
Yeah, well said.
Army of one.
Well said. Yeah. And that's a Bjork song, isn't it? Yeah. No, Army of Me.
Hey, I adore that song as of like the last couple of days, because for me, Bjork is, it's not a thing to refer to at a certain time in my life. It's like yesterday, the week before today. And I was just listening to her description about, which I didn't realize she wrote it for a friend of hers, that she wanted to implore him along, like a friend that she cared about should implore him along. And I'm like, with a song that becomes so popular and universal heard, the first thing I thought about, I said, what if somebody wrote a song about me and that was a message to me? Like, talk about reinforcement. Like, almost like the power of the song is like, it's almost like a command from her. And anyways, love on Björk too.
Yeah, there's lots of, just the art too. Just everything she encompasses, like the multidisciplinary, that creativity, and a lot of people don't always agree with it as she gets, I would say avant-garde, or what have people said to me? Oh, I haven't followed her since Vespertine because it's just too avant-garde and too,
She's incorporating sea animal noises into her. She's always off on an adventure. Rachel, I wanted to ask you something different.
Yeah,
I missed the question, but I wanted to know about like the when. As far as, did you see yourself as an artist at a particular time or moment or event or way of feeling?
No, not at all. And I kind of have a thing to say about that. Like, spite gets you everywhere with. Spite can really motivate you along, and it sort of became this spiteful thing. I didn't really do art. I'll tell you this little blurb about how, impressions that are made upon you, when you're a kid or whatever. When I was in 11th grade at Fairfax High School, I was told by the art teacher that the only way I would get a passing grade in their class was if I became their TA. I swear to God, I'm like, who says that to people? At that moment, though, I was going through the whole teen angst. I was like on drugs. I was, these things, and it just really affected me. I had done this interview for this website called Canvas Rebel, and I had like really some moment to really go in there and think about it and get to the meat of the matter, the heart of the matter of it. And it affected me for years. That was something that was like I think I said in the interview, like a wand that just was waved across my life of this like rejection, not good enough thing, this imposter syndrome, because an 11th grade art teacher said that I suck, basically. How else are you going to say that? But I think he really wanted a teacher's assistant is what he wanted. And maybe, I was the lowest common denominator in that class compared to my classmates. There was this gal that sat next to me, and she could do any kind of still life you can imagine in like 2 hours, oils and crooks, just on oils on a large canvas. I'm like, how in the hell do you do that?
I know.
But again, I'm in this zine DIY, and I can do whatever I want, right? Who's going to stop me? But that stopped me for a very long time. And it's only in the last 2 to 3 years that I was like, hey, like I can do that. And I have all these different influences. And the one that kind of pisses me off, that like rubbed on me, that I was like, I guess, is Patrick Nagel. And the reason why is because my aunt had a bunch of his pieces. After my mom had passed away, I lived with my aunt and uncle, uprooted from Hollywood to Culver City. It's like this wannabe little, like, Mayberry in the middle of LA. And, it was snotty. Everybody had known everybody from 0 to like 8th grade. Right. And then there's me, this misfit coming from like West Hollywood. Their parents wouldn't let me play with them because I knew what a homosexual was. Like, just talk about backwoods weirdness in the middle of the city. So, the art, just came from all of these different things. And Nagel, she had Nagel. So I think it imprinted on me, you know what I mean? I've seen all the, everybody's seen like Betty Page, all the pinup artists. And I have a signed book to me and my parents from 1979 from Alberto Vargas, one of his books. Yeah. And it's one of the most prized things that I own. It's a friend of my dad's who worked for him. And I forgot, it was like a publicist. It was like something like that. But this is a really amazing book in my collection. Of course, when you're 4 and 5 at the time, but there could be a whole other podcast of all the inappropriate movies I watched and the exposure.
Well, why do you like pinup? Why has it been so like? What do you like about pinup? I adore pinup.
It evokes, I feel like they're their own super heroines. A lot of people say it can be like sexist, misogynist, whatever. No, I feel like, for example, let's say Eric Stanton, right? Of women as these powerful, sensual, and I'm not limiting feminism to that. Everybody has their own definition of it, but these are this first like archetype of, these are women that command a room. And if maybe I can be like that, I talk about in my zines, if, I can pretend to be, this superhero version of myself. Like there's a little bit of myself in each of these things that I draw in a way, it's like you kind of know yourself, but I'm like, who's going to stop me? I guess Frida had said that you're your own muse, right? Because hopefully you know yourself well, but it was a crash course in really getting to know myself well. And in 2 to 3 years ago, I had just a absurd string of events where I thought certain things were a certain way, they were not. And I had the rug pulled out from under me with just certain things with relationships and things. Yeah. And that first one came out, it just like was a purging of stuff. And I know so many artists, and we talk about, I think these are like real artists sort of, but what is like a real artist, right? If people are moved or, you bought my zine, for example, right? And you resonated with the questions and some things that I'm on this podcast, right? Who's to say that that's not art? It's not always a monetary exchange. It's if you feel something, and hopefully it's better attention than negative attention. I know some people really thrive on that negative attention, any attention is still attention, right? But I'm not trying to say something provocative to get any reaction out of anybody. I don't dwell in that negativity. I mean, I'm my own pessimist, I suppose, but it's that whole, one other thing, I want to think about this too real quick, the imposter syndrome thing, right? Yeah. So I've had this whole thoughts all about this. And one of the things that I've done, I went to one of these, I'll use it with the air quotes, coding boot camp. I went to one of these coding boot camps in Oakland when I went to the Bay Area. Like, if I can't beat them, join them. God damn it. Right. It's this thing. And I had a contract right before that. And, I'm an all right designer. I can't make the front end, the engineering to save my life. Like it's just a whole thing, but I can make it look beautiful. If it functions 90% fine, but it looks beautiful while you're doing it, right? That's kind of my so I wasn't the developer of that, but we talked about imposter syndrome a lot, like in terms of that LinkedIn thing, we would tour LinkedIn, Twitter, or Twatter. I don't call it. I refuse to call it now. Artists formerly known as Twatter, right? So that
we finally got to the point of the episode where it's Twatter.
It's Twatter. Yeah, there you go. This is the deep one. But with all those things, I got to meet a lot of people in those spaces. These real intricate, brilliant minds, and like your Ray Kurzweils and people like that. So there's this imposter syndrome, right? You're worried you don't measure up, you suck, whatever. But you know what? Not everybody has to know everything. And some people do suck, though. That's the thing. And I was that person that sucked, right? Like I knew what a regular expression was, for example. Could I implement it? Most likely not. I knew relatively what it was. And I was okay with that, though. I'm like, somebody has to suck at this because not everybody can be good at all the things, And that was why that was just such a whole other I made it through that, but I was not cut out to be a developer in the Bay Area. It's just so well cutthroat and all that. But that just was not the interest. But I feel like it fuels my art too, like that which I am not. And I'm not knocking anybody who has. I have tons of tech friends, and somebody's got to make the big money, I guess, and do the right thing, and share the wealth. Somebody's got to buy our art, right? Someone's got to buy our art. So, patrons of our futures, right? These starving artists, whatever. But I think of that imposter syndrome all the time of people suck, and that's okay. But I think if I'm worrying enough about sucking, maybe I don't suck, right? Kind of like bad taste and good taste isn't what John Lennon said. You have to be intelligent to know that you have bad taste.
Yeah. You have to see it from some level of distance.
Right, from some level of distance. And it's bad taste because you have that that knowledge of what it isn't, or, tongue in cheek, I guess. I don't know. What do I know?
No,
I'm
what
just
I needed to ask you to make sure we don't forget to do this is about where to find your work. But first, I wanted to say is we almost got to chat a few days ago. You're in Portland and you had a pop up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could really get over there. Now I happen to be at Dante's Inferno.
that sounded like fun though too. So you had that all planned out.
I was at the Leftover Crack show, the punk show. Which is an LA band. They were phenomenal. Systemic Collapse, Portland based band as well. So had a real fun time. Almost caught up to to you and what you have, but where the heck do people go? Because like you got cool stuff, you got like cool designs, you got lots of art. So
I am really
how do we do it?
I'm really terrible at promoting myself. I mean, I guess every artist is.
I'm trying to help you here.
I appreciate that. That's the business end of it. Just like what? Like, people want these things. I always forget to tell people that my art is for sale, like the originals. I've been just kind of not snotty, like, I don't want to give these things away. They're like, pardon me. But I've got to take pictures. I'll put on my website the pictures of just what I have that is just like, I've got like probably a couple hundred of these things that are like, and I have a special section. I do an art market pretty much once a month. It's at the Bare Bones Cafe and Bar. Basically, I think it's 28th and Belmont. And I've been doing that one with a weird random connection. I met the guy that puts that on at Baby Doll Pizza. I was doing my very expensive year of being a vegan. They were the quickest place I could get a piece of pizza. And he just kind of was like talking to me. And I'm like, is this guy like talking to me, like hitting me? Who is this guy? He worked there. And he was like, no, I do this art market and stuff. And here, follow me on Instagram. And it was the first time I was excited to see a QR code because it made me immediately follow his Instagram. So yay on that QR code.
Yeah.
But he's great and puts on this art market, just really a labor of love, has really brought me and some people together. That's once a month, usually Mondays. It's usually the first or the second Monday of the month here in Portland. And then you can get any of my stuff on my website. It's racheltyrell.com. But really, Instagram is my jam. I've like made Instagram. I feel like I use it differently. Oh, that's another alarm. I always have alarms for the ADHD thing. So
I set about 3 or 4 a day myself.
Right. So you've got to do that. So you can buy my stuff on my website, but Instagram, I've made it this community of people and opportunities I would have never had I not just sort of curated it and really honed in on the stuff that I want to see. And it's not in this meticulous like political bubble or something. I'm supposed to a little bit of that, but just creative people that make me think. And I have had opportunities to travel. I've met some amazing people that are not, without Instagram, it would have never happened, So I use Instagram differently. So I always say, find me on Instagram. I'm always like sharing stuff, and I'm the meme queen and I make memes, and just if you can't laugh, you're going to cry, right? So however I can laugh.
I'm definitely of that. And there's something in philosophy too, for me, that the line is completely thin between comedy and philosophy. I mean, it is so thin, because like even in like the type of stuff with these questions, right? Like the strangeness or the curiosity, where like I'm a city kid from Rhode Island and I ended up getting a scholarship to study a master's of philosophy at Marquette University, Jesuit University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Like, how the fuck is that happen, right?
Yeah, I've been to Milwaukee. Yeah, it's interesting. You
like Milwaukee?
It's all right.
Milwaukee's an all right kind of place.
A brief blurb through it, a blip through it, from visiting a friend over there. And there's art in everything, really. There's art in everything. And I just feel like I've been, blessed to be able to kind of get out of Los Angeles. I mean, I feel like I'm LA through and through. I'll eventually get back there. But, everything costs $18, no matter what it is now. Down there, I was just there for the LA Zine.
You notice that? Everything? Jeez.
It's, your existence. Like, I was just joking to friends. I'm like, it's too expensive to live right now. It's too expensive to exist.
Those calculations, how do I live today?
No, absolutely. It was just, even before you even make these choices of what you're into, but I'm really just blessed to have all these connections I've made, through Instagram, through other things, but mainly Instagram, these art markets. I meet and collaborate with different artists. People are into my art for a variety of different reasons. They use it as collages. I have a famous section in my in the art market. They're called $5 fuck ups. So I have these original pieces of art, and I do some oddball sizes. Like I was doing 6x6 on Bristol for a while, but I just kind of do these oddball sizes depending on whatever paper is available. Right? I'm just kind of like they're too good to throw away, but I don't want to see them anymore. Get them out of my face. So there's my $5 fuck up pile. So I'm getting quite a plentiful $5 fuck up pile that I need people to relieve me of. So
$5 fuck up pile. Jump in and not now, because in a couple of years it'll be a $10 fuck up pile.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe $11.99 with inflation, right, or whatever. But just
let me ask you a random question or two before we pop off here. I found at an art store one time, never saw it before, didn't know nothing about it, Sumi ink, and I started using it. I love doing it. I know you use that. Tell me about Sumi ink and your use of it.
Sumi ink just gives me the blackest blacks that are in my brain, right? So I've gotten a lot better with making the pencil marks not look like pencil marks, and then just Sharpie, because it's sort of a spite thing in a way. I've known a lot of people who've done Sharpies and kind of thought they had patents on Sharpies, neon Sharpies, whatever. It was just a way to kind of do it. And I knew I was kind of an artist because I remember what this person had said to me. You'll know because, I was like, how do you not smell the Sharpie anymore? You just don't smell it anymore. And early into it, I stopped smelling the Sharpies. I stopped smelling the Sharpies. I'm like, oh, does this mean I've arrived here with the Sharpie thing? Okay, fine. But Sumi is one of my best friends, got this for me for Christmas last year. And I have India ink too. Okay. And Sumi, it's faster in a way with how you use it and how it dries. And I don't know what I'm doing. So I've been doing this on all kinds of paper.
I've done that too.
Getting different results. I've done it with some watercolors, which is kind of anathema. You probably shouldn't do that. I was trying to make this portrait of Roy Batty, from Blade Runner with Sumi and watercolors with mixed results. I should just probably dig it up and I'll put in a couple pictures of it on my Instagram or whatever. But you work with it you can dilute it too, but I like just going straight with it and going for it. I have these brushes another friend gave me. He was in Taiwan. They're those little paint brushes. They're a brush, but you can put the ink inside of it. Yeah. And I've had some mixed results with that because you can't always control the tip of it. So it's like on the pressure, it's as you're pushing it down and you're squeezing it. You can have it like explode, which is its own cool thing with the dot.
I know.
Explodes, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it can be super messy. And I've not been known to have the most traditional clean artist setup. So hello, it's like flying everywhere.
Super messy. That's what I liked about it. I became, it's like one of those type of things as I started to paint and develop some of those pieces was just to see what actually like the physical, what they did, like how they bounced off or how they splashed. Yeah,
I actually have it on the nightstand next to me here. And I just kind of put it next to me in my line of sight to remember to use it. But you go in spurts with it, but I'm just like, try it out. I like India ink as well. Sumi, it's just black. It's like blacker than my heart. It's blacker than my eyeliner. I don't know how to put it.
It's a wonderful, it's tough to describe the resplendency of it, but at least for me and my sensitivity to it.
That's a great word.
As a black color.
Resplendency is definitely great. And it's affordable. I really feel like it's affordable for what you get. It lasts forever. I mean, I have way more than use. This feels probably less than a third left. And this is over a year. Now, I don't work with it weekly. I'd say I'll do it on a monthly basis, but it's just whatever's at hand with, with what I'm doing. Eventually, I want to migrate and do crazy black velvet paintings. I'm trying to work with neon and stuff. I want to make some of my art onto black velvet. Giant. And I'm trying to convince some friends, let me go paint one of your walls in your house just for practice and for scale. Because I don't know what I'm doing. I mean,
this is like art porn at this point. It's just explosion, just wonderful. I love it.
I mean, you get, I kind of know what I want to see. And it was sort of the other part about doing art was I didn't see what I saw in my head. And maybe that's a grandiose thing of should people see what I see in my head? Maybe not most of the time, quite honestly. But I have these things in my head.
Not all images are your own.
No, exactly.
You don't have to believe them all.
yeah, and the influences and things in my head. I was like, okay, no one's doing this thing, and I'm not thinking of doing the thing to get attention, like making something in a different medium that isn't traditionally used just to see what happens. Now, some people do that with great aplomb and grace and all of that. I just feel like, hey, it's my spin on it. And if it amuses me, that's great. You know what I mean? And I've been amusing myself with my art as I've gone along. And some people like it here and there too. So I'm like, okay, fine. But, it's kind of audacious to think like, my imprint on the world is going to whatever. But you do, I guess, have to think about your legacy, right? I guess, right? And if it's going to be one, I mean, I don't know. I've done a few things. And if this is something that resonates with people, do it. Just go out there and do it. Who's going to stop you,
Yeah, and there's a sensitivity, I think, nowadays, and maybe like even just dropping back to the basic like pieces of art and zines and stuff, the tactile and tangible and accessible, like, and the culture bearing pieces of it. You can do it, right? And that DIY bit, and I think one of the most fascinating histories I found out, being East Coast originally, but out here in Pacific Northwest, which predated my time out here, kind of like the growth in zines and riot girl culture.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
Kathy Acker, the writer, like I'm obsessed with Kathy Acker, the punk writer, and just kind of hearing her interaction in Washington State, Pacific Northwest, and just seeing zine, riot girl culture, like gritty inks, all this type of stuff. It feels so Pacific Northwest. And I think that's part of it too. With zines have been all around, but there's something about this particularity of the Pac NW zine really captures me.
Zines and the zine historians and like the zine librarians, there's tons of zine libraries all over the world. There's like Glasgow, there's all over the world. And they are really kind of, Screw Library of Congress kind of thing. These are these historians, and I feel like, who has an obligation to scan them all? But I really feel like it would just show the rich history of this fertile ground of it when it wasn't. I don't think zines are a parody themselves just yet, but where they're a little bit too knowing, a little bit too self-aggrandizing. You know what I mean? They're a little bit, they can be that way. So I feel like once I feel like that's happened, maybe I'll step back from it. But these historians, that have meticulously cared for these things, like, for example, great local resource here in Portland is the Independent Publishing Resource Center. And I know my school, PSU, has a risograph lab.
Oh gosh,
and stuff. I've been meaning to go, but just life and things and circumstances.
The smell of the risograph.
So there's all these wonderful resources here locally, but they also have a zine library, and you can make an appointment. So my zines are there, and not that I'm biased or whatever, but there's an amazing wealth of just thousands of these zines, and they had a call out for curation. They need some people to help, like, categorize them and organize them in their space, as they have so many thousands. And this is, I know, the world over, Chicago, name any of the big cities, they have their version, I think, of their riot girl things. And I think it'd be great to just kind of pull all this, like a world zine library. I mean, that's my dream through the world.
Well, and one of the things as far as communications for me, and I haven't like implemented it so much directly in my work, is kind of like the populist elements of it, right? So like working in the labor movement or working in movements, and how do you tell an updated quick story when it needs to be told in an entertaining way, accessible way, like people saying what's going on, and then you could see something drawn out or written out or collage to tell you what's going on, and photos and stuff like that. There's a piece to the maybe it's the ephemeral or the temporary aspect of it, there. But there's something about circulation and popular consumption that, for me, really appeals to me, and stuff that's on a paper or the risograph or,
Right, because everything went really digital. It feels like now
you can text action.
Snail mail is like an antiquated art form. It's a thing. So I brought digital with my zines. Like, I always felt like I played around in Procreate on the iPad and stuff. And I have a bunch of friends who do wondrous, meticulous, beautiful things with Procreate. But I always felt like my background, is kind of not cheating, because you can buy all those presets, like people that, do comics, for example, they have all those presets and the brushes and the thing, and you can make it just instantly look like poof, insert whichever favorite cartoonists, make it look like that. I feel like that's sort of not cheating, but I feel like analog, I just want it tactile in my hands.
Sure.
And then what I do is when I write my stuff, I type it out. And then I kind of, depending on what I'm doing, I do a Photoshop or Canva when I kind of fuse it all together and make it, still making it hopefully organic, but just the way my brain works. And, my writing is pretty terrible. I don't want to cut out like ransom note style, although I know people that do wonderful zines with that too, in that like ransom style, the cut up kind of, was it Burroughs, but I think it was even before Burroughs, it was Brian Geisen who did it, and William Burroughs piggybacked on him with that, and, wrote Exterminator and Junkie and these novels or whatever, just anything that breaks it up. And then later on Genesis Peorage, all that. So, and by the way, real quick. So I Belong to Me, right? So you were asking about that. Yeah. So that is the title of a song from Chris and Cosi, who were in Throbbing Gristle, later becoming Chris and Cosi. They were husband and wife. They were part of Throbbing Gristle with Genesis Peorage and Peter Sleazy, Richardson's last name. Yeah. Okay. So they have a song that kept popping up. I have various playlists, but this song, this I Belong to Me, was coming up repeatedly when I was drawing. And it was kind of this uncanny thing. By like the seventh time, I was like, okay, like what the heck is this? And these aren't like 3 or 4 song playlists. These are, rich, robust variety of encompassing genres and all that. So the song kept popping up and I was like, that's it, right? Who do I belong to? Anybody? I don't belong to me. I belong to me, right? So then the song title and just the song in my head. So every moment I was making those zines, and that's an ongoing series. That's my first one, but I feel like I'm only going to do it when I'm absolutely compelled to do it, not because I have to do it, And I have 2 other zine series, and I have one on LA. It's called the Los Angeles Chronicles. So it's like LA My Way.
I saw that on your website.
I have one out, and it was well received at the LA Zine Fest, and it's been well received in other places too. And then I have one about addiction called Anywhere Out of the World, and that's a Dead Can Dance song, actually.
Dead Can Dance, good.
Yeah, it's a Dead Can Dance song. So I've written one about that with addiction, because that's the field, I've been working in. Maybe I'll still do some therapy with it, but I'm thinking more toward policy changes. I don't want to be a political science major by any means, no, but it's got to start above us, especially in Oregon and other places that aren't doing so well with mental health,
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do something. Somebody's got to advocate and change the policies. And I have ideas for policies. I really do. And I'm like, oh God, great. No, I don't want to have ideas for policies. Like what you were talking about earlier, making changes, labor changes, just looking, accountability. That's what I want to see, is accountability with it. And I feel like I can help people be accountable, whether that's, I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's this incredible vulnerability that you have, and I Belong to Me. And, it's a mix, because even just talking about the beautiful illustrations and what they are of you in photography, I mean, you're in there and just striking images in the use of the ink. And it's a beautiful and intense zine, right? Because it's a zine, it doesn't mean it's not those things, or you're not, in my head, like, you're not supposed to talk about it that way. Right. But it's striking and personal in that way. And I think when we're talking mental health, I can say for myself, sober from alcohol, 15 years. Yeah, that was my demon that was going to kill me, and I have this time with it. But there was something around my survival where I had to be personal about what was going on with me, that other people I was around had to be personal about. Do you want to hear how fucked up, how I fuck things up? There's and drop it out and to move through it. So I'm comfortable around that, and I just applaud your courage in general, because it's tough to do. I've done things on the show where it's like I'm kind of experimenting a little bit, and I'm like, I don't want to look that way. Like, I'm not precious or anything, but I'm like, I don't want to sound weird or something,
Yeah, that's the part about that vulnerability bit. I'm not naming names or anything, but there have been people in different scenes who are kind of like, you don't want to ever reveal, like, for example, the body dysmorphia and things like that. You don't ever want to talk about anything like that. And what was that movie? And I can't remember if it's Montgomery Clift, Cary Grant, one of these guys, or is it Jimmy Stewart? One of them. And then they say mental illness doesn't run in my family; it gallops.
Oh,
Mine, I think, does the foxtrot or the Charleston in mine. Geesh Louise. So just
I
coming.
love that your actor list that you were thinking through started with Montgomery Clift. I think that has a particular meaning. That's wonderful. I don't know if it was Montgomery Clift,
but it is. It's one of them, and I'm like, God damn it! How
Yeah.
come I can't remember? It's like an imprint in a moment of a thing. Watching all sorts of stuff from. I've borrowed a bit from everybody I've kind of grown up with and things. Have that skill set of like what they collected, for example, in swap meet and selling things. I have that expertise of theirs that I've kind of observed. Even though like certain fine china and different collectibles, samurai swords aren't my thing. I know kind of what to look for if I see it, I guess. So it's kind of like I feel like a curator of stuff like that. But yeah, it's a vulnerability piece of being told that maybe I shouldn't, I shouldn't, or I'm too this, or not enough of this, or whatever. I'm tired of hearing that. I'm too much. Maybe you're not enough.
Right.
That's another thing. I'm not too much. You're not enough. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
It's a calibration.
You have to remember what's ego and not too. You know what I mean? Where you like can't taking anything personally. What is that? I've been rereading. It's the basic, the 4 agreements. It's
Coelho.
Yeah, going through that, and I have it just like right there. I forget his God, what is his name again? And we all know it and all that. It's like not
COLHO.
It's Jose.
Pablo?
It's a 3 name, and I'm it's a shame that I'm not.
3 agreements.
What is wrong with me? I don't remember what I've had for lunch 2 days ago. So
Rachel, we covered a lot of material.
We did, but the one is be true to your word. That's what I'm thinking of right there. Be true to your word. Start with that, and then
be true to your word.
Yeah.
Rachel, I gotta say, it's been a real pleasure to be able to chat with you on the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast. And,
likewise. We went over a little bit. It worked out, though. It was fine.
I would say too, looking forward to trying to find you in the city there somewhere.
I promise for this year
some of your art.
I promise I'll be better about updating like the events on my website and stuff. I just like get a little discombobulated. I'm like,
just keep in mind that there's a randomness to it where I missed you by 20 minutes on a late post on a Wednesday. You never know in Portland somebody running by and needs to get some Christmas gifts or New Year gifts or Rachael Tyrell art, and you never know what might happen. So
so hit me up on Instagram. That's probably the best way to reach me. I probably spend the most time on there. I've curated it, and it's just that was a whole accidental thing that could be another podcast. But this is great. Thank you. I was really nervous, especially kind of messing up. I thought it was yesterday. I'm like, oh my God! And then last minute, I asked one of my really great successful artist friends, oh my God, I'm going to be on this podcast in an hour. What advice do you have? And he gave me some stellar advice. He was kind of like, keep your background the same. Don't walk around with it for the audio. Make sure you have, the stable, internet connection and stuff. So this was some great advice.
That's what artists do. Like
I get to thank him. I'm like,
gig. I've never played bass guitar. I got it in 3 weeks. What do I do?
Oh, that's what I've done too. I have a bass I've had for 12 years and I pick it up once in a while and I'm like, okay, tinker with it and fine, but you don't.
Performers, right? There's if somebody calls showtime, artists a lot of times have to be ready for the show. Do you know how to do this? Of course I do. And let's go.
Right. Fake it till you make it. No, totally. Fake it till you make it. I appreciate that very much. But so this is great. Closing off the year here. I'm excited. My first podcast. Yay. This is
awesome.
A gracious host. So
happy. Thank you. Happy 2025. I'm going to be picking up some more of your art heading into Portland. Super fun chatting with you. Everybody truly check out Rachael.
I'm doing a special thing too, so definitely follow me on Instagram. I'll drop the link. I'm going to do it like right before Christmas. I'm just going to put up my zines for you to read. Probably, I don't know if I'll keep it for the week. I don't know. I'll put up like a coffee thing. So send me $1 or $2 or not, or print it out or whatever if you want to do. I might do that with my zines. I just thought about it. I'm like making it, accessible anywhere. However, my web development stuff, I can do that. I can, make it.
It's worth the effort. Beautiful pieces of art, and there's also, Floating World Comics as an esteemed, curious, beautiful publisher purveyor of printed goods. You know, you're on their shelves,
And I'm on
and
their shelves.
that's particular. There's a particular so
Yeah,
a
no, it was
great place to
amazing.
go.
That was such a thing. I was like, wait, what? Is this really like happening? I had to take a picture like in disbelief, like, really? This is really happening? Oh, okay. This is not that you've arrived, but it was great that we have these resources. We have these wonderful places in Portland and beyond too. There are so many great places. There's books with pictures too. And, you know,
books with pictures, great comic. Not just and a final thing on that too, just so it's some of those places, moving out here, I had no idea the comics culture. You know, I guess I was out in Wisconsin for a few years, but you know, there's comic shops out there. There's comics culture everywhere. But when I got out here, I was like, holy shit, the artists live here. Like they create here.
Oh, it's gnarly.
Like,
and then, you know, I'm like Dark Horse and all the other,
hell yeah.
It's amazing. You're just like, okay, what? Like, great. It's just, and that resource, you know, and you can't take it for granted either though, because, you know, with the times that we're in, I mean, everybody needs the support, all the support they can get, from the little guys with the DIY to, you know, the publishers, you know, the more traditional publishers. I think everybody's hurting a little bit. You know, with things, so it's important to support.
Buy your zines, support your indies, get your
buy
comics.
My $5 fuck ups, please relieve me of them, because I'm tired
get
of
your $5 fuck ups before inflation hits.
Before their $10 fuck ups.
Yeah, because they have to be just to get by. Plenty to find there. Rachel, thank you so much. Best of wishes right up ahead. 2025. This episode will be coming out right around that time.
Yeah,
and wanted to wish you a happy 2025, which seems like a big
and keep in touch and stuff.
number.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.
And listeners, to stay connected with us and our guests, visit somethingratherthannothing.com. Join our mailing list for exclusive updates and access to guest-created art. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast platform. People really read that shit. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our community across the planet. This is a global show, and we like to give a shout out to our many listeners across the world, including many listeners in Canada, Spain, Germany, UK, Argentina, Brazil, India, Thailand, and so many more places. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast for behind the scenes content. And the best way to help the show is to tell your friends about us. If you love it, they'll love it too. Tell your friends who love it. We love you. This is Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast.